All right.
Happy to hear your voice.
Oh, thank you. This is going to be fun, right? It's going to be fun because you guys all seem to be interested in it. And some of you who have not had success with an offer have come in and gone, I don't understand what happened. I didn't get my offer accepted. They were perfect buyers. They had a great credit score. I waived or did an as is with right to inspect, and I still got beat out. And then when you've asked the questions, you found out later that they either did an appraisal waiver or a gap appraisal and whatever other term, as I discussed in the little trailer I sent out. So what I want to do is we're going to put up the meeting. So let's do that. I'm going to share my screen because there's some things we need to go over. And you guys can see my screen, right? We're good?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. Look at that. All right. So as I have to start off legally, I'm disclaiming everything I'm doing right here, okay? And Tom, you hear me, right? Because you're going to be part of the deposition, you know.
Sure.
So seriously though, an important topic, a topic that, you know, a lot of people want to stay away from. In fact, you know, if you call MR, they're going to say, oh no, we're not going to even touch this. By the time we even construct something to give you guys as far as addendums or whatever else, the market will probably change. Now that's not something agents want to hear, correct? So that being said, I said, you know what, we can't just leave this alone, correct? So we need to have this discussion. It's part of our real world situation. And whether this lasts another 4 months or another 2 years, you know, we need to be prepared for negotiating, doing what's in the best interest of our clients. And again, another disclaimer, this may not be in the best interest of your client, but if your client is serious, qualified, urgency exists, they have the money, they understand that, you know, this is something they are willing to do, then we need to be prepared to assist our clients in this. So let's go in. Just a funny one. I saw when it said skip appraisals. What are the GIFs? I thought that was kind of cute. So, you know me, I like to do a little TikTok here and there. So here we're going to do a TikTok videos on gap appraisals around the country. So some of this stuff's pretty interesting. So take a listen. Meanwhile, I'm going to let a couple other people in. Hopefully I got the right YouTube video on.
Today, and I wanted to share so you don't have to lose. Put an offer in. There's two other offers. Maybe there's three. Either way, two other that were competing against me.
Can you hear it?
And the thing that made the difference was the appraisal gap money. This is what's happening in the market. Houses are not appraising, meaning they're appraising lower than what a buyer and a seller agreed to sell the house for. Let me give you an example. House is in the market for $250. They agreed to buy it at $275. And it only appraises at $265. So then there's $10,000 that needs to be covered by someone. Well, the seller doesn't want to pay it because maybe they'll find another person that will pay it. And then the buyer has to come up with that money and they have to tell them beforehand. So there's like this mystery money that needs to be paid, needs to be in this offer, and you have to state it ahead of time. Well, we didn't have the money. So we were out. We had little money, but not all the money compared to the other guys.
First of all, appraisal comes in low. In a normal market, if the purchase price is here and the appraisal comes in lower, that is then negotiated. Maybe the seller drops the price a little bit, but both parties figure it out. Seller's market, buyers are coming forth oftentimes now with that appraisal gap coverage, saying that this is how much I'm willing to bring to the table over that appraised value. So you know I'm not just going to back out. Something that oftentimes makes your offer look more attractive.
So Brian, can we talk about appraisal gap insurance? What is that? Heads up to the buyers and the realtors out there. There's no such thing as appraisal gap insurance. It's a fancy word that means that the buyer will cover the difference in the gap between the offer price and the appraised value of the home if there's a shortage. The appraisal gap insurance is the buyer's cash and the availability to make up the difference. That's what it means.
So what did you think? Funny? Interesting? People are still trying to get in. Poor Brad. Are you in, Brad, yet? All right. So anyway, so again, you can see all over the country, we're all having this problem. Everybody's giving it a different name. And it's just something we have to deal with. And so I just wanted to give you a couple indications of what people are saying, how they're feeling. I thought that was funny. That's why I was joking with Wade about the gap appraisal insurance. I mean, that's what they're trying to say, ensure that they can get the offer accepted. So let's move on from that. So a couple things I want to just go over. Ultimately, it is, again, your client's decision, and you should seek legal advice from any attorney, or they should seek legal advice from an attorney. I shouldn't say any attorney, but an attorney. You must have contingency disclosure acknowledgement signed, the LF 321. I go over this over and over again with you guys. Some of you act like that is the only piece of paper you need when they're striking or changing something. That is one, you're actually going to need the addendum saying it, or you're going to have to strike some clause from it. Again, that's your client. That's not us, because we're not practicing attorneys. But that is, again, it's not enough to just have the LF 321. Oh, again, a misspelling here, but make sure that it is with the specific addendum. Make sure you do a CMA and save it for your own CYA, your own protection. I've had some situations in the past, especially in the last seller's market, where later down the road, a client was talking and felt like they overpaid for property. They were railroaded. They should have been more discussion with their agent before they submitted the offer. So, you know, again, once someone gets into the property and the dust settles down and everything else, sometimes they start thinking differently about things. So whether you're representing a seller, but in this case, representing the buyer, and you're submitting the offer, you should have CMAs together going over. Sure, you're going to have a professional. There's going to be an appraisal. The appraisal should be enough to say, hey, this is the value moving forward. But remember, they are with a waiver or with a gap appraisal. There's going to be a situation where you may need to have a discussion ahead of time with them saying, hey, this may fall short, or most likely is going to fall short of the value. And therefore, you're going to come up with that difference. And we're going to submit this offer, and you are going to have to proceed forward with it legally. Obviously, you can speak to an attorney and find that out. And one thing we're going to go over later is, Dan and I discussed it, is FHA and FHA amendatory clauses as far as the legality of modifying addendums. So hold on one second. I've got 3 people saying they're waiting in the waiting room, but I, for some reason, don't see them. Let's see. I'm going to admit all. So there they are. Some people I thought I had already admitted, but they're back in trying to get in. So hopefully they got in this time. Brad, you there?
I'm in.
Oh, thank God. All right, so Brad's in. So anyway, he was trying desperately, even contacted Saloy. So anyway, let's move forward with that. So again, be very careful. Make sure you take care of that. Some other things before we actually get into the forms. Buyer, this was actually parts of a article. Buyers should consider adding an appraisal gap coverage clause in their offer. To put it simply, appraisal gap coverage is when the buyer agrees to cover certain amounts of the difference between the offer price and the appraised value, if in fact there's an appraisal gap. So we just heard those people on TikTok that I've threaded together so you could get an idea of what's going on and what they're saying. Here it is in written form. For example, let's say You offer 200,000 on a home, your appraisal gap coverage clause, you could say you're willing to pay $10,000 over the appraised value. If the appraised value ends up being equivalent to the listing price, you don't have to pay any extra money, but if the appraised value is under, be prepared to come to the table with more money. The benefit of the appraisal gap coverage clause is it shows the seller you're serious about purchasing the home without having to offer an obscene amount of money. I don't know about that, but there's a lot of obscene amounts of money being thrown around out there. It also provides you with an option to cancel the contract if there is an appraisal gap. So depending on the clause, you can have a third paragraph discussing if it goes below that amount of money, you can either refer back to the, in our situation and the MR contract for a conventional loan, paragraph 7, which talks about the going back and forth if it doesn't appraise, or you could just say the contract's then null and void. So if you're willing to pay up to or from 190 and there was a 10,000 gap because you offered 200,000, but if it came in at 187, then you refer back to paragraph 7, which means you can either negotiate that part of it or turn around and cancel it. So again, be very careful with the wording and always use CYAs. Make sure you told them to review it, talk to an attorney, whatever. And then finally make sure that you, again, use the contingency disclosure acknowledgement form that they are using a gap appraisal or an appraisal waiver form. So one more before we get into the actual sentences, because I don't want you to think I'm creating law here. Tom, you heard me say that. I'm giving the reminder, the warning, that we are realtors, and there's an Article 13, which I know Tom teaches plenty of CE classes, so we can articulate this in a much better discussion. But at the end of the day, we need to know we're not authorized to practice law, and it is against the Code of Ethics, Article 13. Someone's walking around and I can hear their heels. So anyway, Tom, do you want to get on real quick and discuss this before we actually get to these words?
Guy, I think you said it brilliantly, and we see it time and time again. It is just always important that we remind ourselves, especially with these addenda, or if we're drafting addenda where they want changes to the addenda, to make sure that you understand you're acting outside the scope of your license. And by the way, you're also, unless you're an appraiser, you're not licensed to act as an appraiser either. And I think a lot of times in these appraisal situations, we find a lot of agents, and I hear the conversations all the time saying how inaccurate the appraisal was. Again, you're not an appraiser, so don't try to convince your buyers that the appraiser was inaccurate. If you have an issue with the appraisal, contact the appraiser and have that discussion. But I think a lot of times, especially in these gap situations, you want to convince the buyers that, hey, it's okay to go ahead and agree to the gap and pay the gap because the appraisal was off. It's inappropriate under any circumstances to act outside of your license. So while you're not a lawyer, you're also not appraisers either. So let's not counsel our folks either on legal matters or appraised matters as well.
Okay. Yes. So again, we are not attorneys. Hold on a second. We are not attorneys, so we do have to be careful. But at the same time, we're having this conversation because we also don't want to have losing out for our clients when our clients are in fact trying to get their offers accepted. So again, be very careful. Make sure we do an ounce of prevention. Again, reducing issues. We want to make sure that we have informed conversations and communications with our clients ahead of time, that we go over everything, that we go over the types of contingencies we're going to have with them so they have a chance to understand what they're doing. And then that we also make sure that, they know what they're doing when we're doing the waiver appraisals and what have you. So, and that they know what the contingency disclosure acknowledgement form is. Again, our clients have amnesia later on sometimes, not all clients, but there are sometimes, and they don't want to blame themselves for the situation they've gotten into. So we just need to be careful with that. Any other perspective, Tom, that you want to give before we get into the verbiage?
No, I think you've said it brilliantly. So let's
Brilliantly.
get into
Okay,
the forms.
Good. So we're going to go over a couple of them. I am kind of changed the numbers and the taking any names out, etc., so I can protect the everybody. But I do want to say that there's been lots of these gap appraisals happening and waivers, and you all know it. And there's and some of you have also been on the other side of it, where you either didn't use it or your client did not feel comfortable yet. And when I say yet, because if they're really that serious and they keep getting beat out, they're going to ask you, what else can we be doing? And you will have to disclose that this is something out there you're competing against.
And Guy,
But
before we begin on that, are any of these Long and Foster forms, or are these just other forms that you're
all
using?
right, and I was actually going to discuss that. So
sorry about that.
No. And I actually think I put that in the video as well, that these are some, when I sent it out to you guys, these are some of the documents I've seen floating around out there. Meaning, for instance, this one is actually from another broker. So not that I haven't seen parts of this, okay, and I've seen others. We've got something in here that's so brief, it's one sentence. I sent that to you, Tom. And we have something as large as this that might be a little bit more complex. And again, I am not saying use any of these, that they're accurate or whatever. I'm just putting them out there. I'm going to send out the meeting minutes. At the end of the day, you just have to understand that they exist, and this is what you're dealing with competition. So first thing, we'll go over this one, for example. And actually, this exact verbiage was on a much higher offer. So I'm just going to say that. Okay. So I've seen this language in much larger numbers with much larger gaps. So right now, I just put a $10,000 gap in there. But understand, I've seen this with a big number in there. Okay. So for valuable consideration, receipt of which is hereby acknowledged, we, the undersigned parties, hereby agree as followed. Paragraph 7, the appraisal contingency of the conventional financing addendum is amended as followed. In the event that the property appraises for any value of at least $395, then the purchase price shall remain $405. Okay. So meaning that it came in lower, they're guaranteeing that the purchase price will still be $405 if it comes in anywhere between $395 and $405. Notwithstanding the appraisal value, in such an event, the appraisal contingency shall be deemed to have been satisfied and no further action is required by either party. I did not go to law school. Tom did. Maybe he knows that language sounds okay, kind of works. But again, he's probably going to bite his lip too, because you don't want to be on the hook for this. In the event the property appraises for any value between $385 and $395, then the purchase price shall be adjusted to $10,000 greater than the appraised value. Meaning that if it came in at $386, they would be required to pay up to $396. Okay, does that make sense? Right? So, for example, and they get here, we got an example. If the property appraises at $390, the purchase price shall then be adjusted to $400. Okay. So in such events, the appraisal contingency shall be deemed as satisfied and no further action is required by either party. But in the event that it goes under 385, so there's a bottom number, then we will go back to the paragraph 7 of the appraisal contingency of the conventional financing addendum, which shall now apply. Meaning now you get to either have the parties say, you know what, I'm not going down, therefore we're going to, get out of the contract, or I'm not buying this house and coming up with more money. So meaning instead of 10,000, I would need 13,000. The buyer says no way. and the seller says, well, no way, I'm not reducing it that low. I'm sure somebody else will pay, for this property and pay that amount of money. So again, this is a discussion of buyers and sellers. Tom said it, we're not the appraiser. We do CMAs, which is a competitive market analysis, and we've even changed the terms. And when we used to always say it was a comparative, right? So now we say it's competitive market analysis, and we give them, properties of like kind to go over in the market. But ultimately, we're there negotiating, but we have to wear the right hat. And the right hat is we're the real estate agent. We're not the lender. We're not the appraiser. And, we just have to be careful with that. And we're definitely not the attorney. So all other terms and conditions remain the same. Any questions on this one? Agents, unmute yourself.
I actually do have a question. I'm assuming the way I read this, and because they put all terms and conditions, other terms and conditions remain the same. It's still up to the seller to agree to a reduction of the purchase price in the event that the appraisal is lower and the gap doesn't cover all the way up to the purchase price. Is that how you read this?
I read it that anything above 385 on this particular transaction, we know how it's going to play, and it's going to be outside of paragraph 7, which it says it's amended. Anything under 385 at this point would then go back to, as you see, the fifth paragraph in, which says, in the event the property appraises for any value less than 385, then go back to paragraph 7, and that applies. And if we go back to paragraph 7, we all know this because I've trained it over and over again, that's when you got 2 days to make a decision, 3 days to make a decision. And if the seller says no and the buyer insists that they've reduced the price, then the parties have the right to get out of the contract. So that is with this particular appraisal addendum that was drafted. Some of them do not have this, okay? So, but this does have it in there that you go back to this appraisal or go back to that paragraph. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what you're saying is the seller has already agreed to lower the price if it's beyond the gap. Is that if the appraised value was lower than the gap?
Is within the gap. Is within the 385, not within the gap. Within the 385 to 400, we know exactly how within 385 to 405, we know exactly how it's going to go.
Okay.
Below 385, it's going to be negotiable as if it always was if it didn't appraise, based on the MR contract.
Got it. Okay. I agree.
All right. Perfect. Awesome. So if Tom agrees, we're close.
Sorry.
Uh-oh, Amanda, what's going on with that?
I'm sorry. I really got a little bit confused. So you talk about when has this gap appraisal form or something, because it's not the general one, right? The general one has 2 days for sending, and you have notice, you send back. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused.
All right, Amanda. So real quick, there is, and I didn't put this on the computer, and I could go pull it up real quick. But there is a conventional financing page that has paragraph 1, talks about, the financing, paragraph 2, 3, whatever, all the terms and whatever. And then paragraph 7 gets into the appraisal. And that paragraph talks about if the property doesn't appraise for X, then we go back and forth, right? And then they have the right to, decide to either get out of the contract or come up with an acceptable number, okay? So it says your buyer has 2 days, the seller has 2 days, or whatever number you put in there. So then we go back to that. This is a special addendum drafted that goes beyond anything you've seen in the MR contract and anything we were dealing with for the last few years. There are a couple deals, I will be honest with you, there's been a couple transactions, even in 2014, 15, 17, 18, where I've had, types of gap appraisal contingencies because they weren't sure this unique property, what was going to happen and what the price was going to be. and there were terms written, but they were anomalies. They were not the norm. Okay.
Okay.
Got
you.
it.
Yes,
Got it.
Brad.
Question for you on the contingency waiver acknowledgement form. If you provide something like that, there are a bunch of check boxes on that form. One
Okay.
of which is the waiving the appraisal contingency. Do you feel like that's not a full waiver? That's not a full waiver of the appraisal contingency. So what, if anything, would you have them check on that contingency waiver form?
I think there's lines, and then I would say that they understand that they are signing a gap appraisal. So instead of
Okay.
appraisal waiver, just put the word gap appraisal, and that they understand that they are paying the difference of what the, appraiser is saying the true value of the property is.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
yeah, so you could do that for almost anything. There could be some special type of environmental thing that popped up on the property, and you said, hey, you don't want to get this checked out. We're hearing it's a problem, and you want to specify that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And Brad actually sent me one that's going to be fun at the end. We're going to go over as well. So I did put that in here. So we're seeing all kinds of, and again, you can always speak up and tell your fun story as well. So here we go. Next one, the appraisal deficit waiver. Okay. If the appraised value of the property is less than the purchase price, buyer shall nevertheless consummate and complete the purchase of the property if, as the result of such appraisal, buyer cash requirements to close is increased by $10,000 or less. If, as a result of such appraisal, buyer cash requirement to close is increased by $10,000 or less, buyer cannot and shall not rely on the appraised value of the property to terminate the contract, declare the contract null and void, or to require the seller to decrease the purchase price. Buyer and seller agree that the terms of this addendum, notwithstanding any contractual terms of the contrary, and particularly notwithstanding the terms of paragraph 9, 10, and 29 of the contract. This addendum is specifically subject to the terms of paragraph 29 of the contract. So now you have to understand what all these paragraphs are. Well, paragraph 9, it is the contingency period or contingency type of the loan. So is it conventional, FHA, VA, hard money, whatever. Paragraph 10 talks about the loan app and loan commitment time. And then paragraph 29, that discusses the buyer's responsibility. That if the most important buyer responsibility, and one of the ones we've had a couple fights about, is contingent on specifically the settlement. A lot of times the person sells their home and they don't make the contract contingent on the settlement because they think it's a no-brainer. They got a solid client on their, or solid buyer on their property. So they go out and get their other property and they put an offer in and say it's not contingent on the sale or settlement. And that's the buyer responsibility obligation part. So that one is one of the keys. Of course, there can be fraudulent, knowing they had a bankruptcy or some other type. Tom, did I articulate that correctly?
You did. You did.
Okay.
Great job.
Okay, just want to make sure, don't want to miss anything. And here's a fun one. Someone wrote this. If the property listed above is under appraises, buyer will make up the difference up to $15,000. Now, you all love simple, but this may not have all the answers in it. So, Tom, how do you read this one? And this is right out of a real contract, by the way, that was ratified.
Yeah, look, I think the other ones that we've seen have been needlessly complex and confusing. I think this one is a little too simple. I think you have to define what's the difference in the 15,000. And here you want to specifically state, will make up the difference up to $15,000 between the purchase price and the appraised value. But I actually like, in this case, the simpler versions. I don't like all these complex examples. You know, but by the way, this doesn't answer the question that I have is the seller stuck with agreeing to it? Under the old forms, the forms that you just showed, looking at it from the seller side, the seller agreed to reduce the price, right? If, but here the seller didn't agree, and then you go back to paragraph 7, which says the buyer has to go through the dance, which is you let them know what the appraised value is, and here's what we're willing to pay, and then the seller has the obligation or burden to say, I will agree to reduce the price. So, you know, looking at it from both sides, I don't think any of the verbiage that I've seen is complete. But I do think the ones we went over earlier are needlessly complex.
Yeah, well, but at the same time, people want to know what if this happens? What if that happens? They even give an example in the one to show. And here, like you said, do we go back to paragraph 7 or not? Has it been stricken? Nothing's discussed. You would have to assume you do go back to the paragraph if this is an FHA deal, and we're going to get into that as well.
Right.
That, you know, what happens then? Real quick, wouldn't it just, Dan just sent this, wouldn't it just be simpler to say buyer and seller agree that the buyer will pay up to X above the appraised value, but not more than the agreed upon sales price? Buyer and seller agree that the buyer will pay up to $20,000 above the appraised value, but not more than the sales price. So again, that's kind of like the last one, but it doesn't say what happens if it goes lower than that. So what we're having right now is we're not typically talking about 1% or 2% off on the sales price, right? We're not talking about, you know, 404 versus 400 or whatever. You know, we're talking about a little bit different price point and, you know, difference in appraised value and sales price as well. What's going to happen? So it's just interesting. I don't know. Again, I'm not here to tell you exactly what to do. I'm just telling you these are out here. You have to consider what your client's needs are, and there's all different versions of this. So especially what if you're on the listing side and you're receiving something like this? It's something you have to consider. There's another factor some people are worried about. All right, this is submitted along with an escalation clause, okay? Well, if I'm paying 500 but willing to go up to 535, and then I have this clause in here, well, the clause can't really go over the escalation verbiage, right? Because you're putting definite numbers, but if you used an escalation clause in your full sales contract, we don't know what that definite number is unless you're going to do the ultimate, whatever it was going to go up to, correct? You follow me? So that would be one of the problems. And I would say with that issue, the buyer's agent would have to make sure to articulate, you know, we're going to have to eventually pull out the escalation clause in and put the numbers in, and the listing agent would have to say, all right, remove this and give me the offer at 535 or whatever, and then have the escalation clause or have the gap appraisal, whatever the number is, talk about going what happens at 535, blah, 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 versus 500 up to 535. And hopefully I didn't just confuse some of you with that. But again, if they're throwing in a gap appraisal and an escalation clause, remember that there's got to be finite numbers in there with the gap appraisal. Does that make sense? Okay, hopefully it does. Hopefully I didn't lose you there. So maybe Brad wants to discuss this one, but he sent this one to me the other day, and it says, agent shared with me, someone in another state, I think it was, did this one with him, trying to entice a seller to accept an offer more quickly. Now, I reworded some of this stuff, cherry on top. You know me, I like to make it a little more fun. Offer more than list in your offer, and whatever else you want to do, meaning other terms, waiving inspections, whatever, to make the offer look more attractive. And then the cherry on top is to add a premium. Say an extra, say that an extra $5,000 or $10,000 or $50,000 more will be given if that buyer will add on to the if that buyer, it will be added onto the offer if that offer is accepted within 8 hours. So I should have not looked at this, just told you the story. But anyway, so meaning that they're going to submit an offer, and if the seller is willing to accept the offer, the buyer will throw in an extra $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever if they get it within 8 hours. So say you see it coming soon, and you know it's going to be a madhouse, right? There's going to be 20, 30 offers thrown at them. So you think, all right, so the house is listed at 500. I'll offer 535, but I'm going to put a special little notice in that if they turn around and accept our offer within this 8-hour time frame, I'll go 545 instead of 535. So am I saying it right, Brad?
That's the gist of what this agent described to me that they were doing.
Paying premiums if they got their offer accepted within 8 hours or less of when they submitted it to them. Meaning they weren't going to be put into the rat race, with submitting 30 offers. They were trying to entice that seller to look at their offer and accept it, and that they were going to get a premium if they were willing to do that. Which again, I don't know the legalities of this. And I was telling Brad that I actually have heard of stories that are even crazier in Georgia. I wish I would have saved them. But apparently it almost looks like bribery down there with some of the stuff. So anyway, again, I'm not teaching this. I'm just letting you know how crazy it is out there. And that's why I put this one as a little more fun. Please do not, hold me on this one. I'm just telling you that this is something that one of our agents has seen. And I am just letting you know that stuff like that is happening out there. So is Christina or Dan there?
Yep.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
both here.
All right. Christina, have you run into, or Dan, have you run into any issues with the amendatory clause and the buyer willing to come up with a difference and any legalities on this?
I actually have not. Have you, Dan?
Well, you can't have an addendum that supersedes the FHA mandatory clause. So if you're the listing agent and you accept one of these addenda that we've been talking about, it's not really enforceable because the FHA addendum says it has to appraise. And you can't make the buyer pay over the appraisal value.
So if everybody is listening to this, you know how Tom and I always have fun telling you that, yes, somebody may not have to get their HOA docs or condo docs in hand prior to settlement and they can still settle. But legally, right, Tom, they never can give up that legal right to get those condo docs, and they can say, you know what, I'm not going to settlement. And there's nothing the seller can do or the agent can do to make them go if they didn't receive them prior to settlement. Same thing here, the amendatory clause, you may say, hey, I'll come up with the $20,000 difference, but FHA has guidelines and rules that say, hey, FHA and government requirements are, we said this contract was contingent on an FHA loan. And what does that mean? Well, there's terms and guidelines with that FHA loan. In fact, some of you have called me up and said, why is the lender asking for the FHA amendatory clause? Have you ever had that problem, Christina or Dan, that people are asking? And so
Yeah,
they ask, why do they ask for that, Christina? Why do they ask for the amendatory clause?
As part of the contract, number one. And then also the appraised value needs to match what we have in the loan.
Ooh, scary. I mean, that's the conversation. So we're in a seller's market. We want to make sure that buyers have an opportunity to use FHA addendums. There's pros and cons to FHA versus conventional. If someone has debt to income, right, or credit scores, whatever, right? So we've been bragging all this time that FHA hasn't been as rough as it used to be in the past. And we used to have these VC sheets and they were much more complex than they are now. At least I feel that that's correct. But nonetheless, they've never gotten rid of the lender setting forth the appraised value of the property of not less than X, and that the buyer shall have the privilege and option to proceed with consummation of the contract without regards to the amount of the appraised value. That is in the terminology. So I did highlight that. But, you know, at the end of the day, HUD is saying that the property has to have the appraised value, correct?
Mhm.
Yes,
So,
correct.
Well, can I ask a question about that? Because all that says is the buyer can't be forced to buy the property if it underappraises, which has always been my understanding of the FHA addenda.
perfect. But
If it
Tom,
does-
stop
Yeah.
with that sentence.
Yeah.
The buyer cannot be forced.
Right.
So just like we were saying, the HOA docs must be received by the buyer, correct?
Right.
They cannot be forced to go to settlement if they did not get the docs, right? They can get released from the contract, even if they signed something 3 weeks ago saying, I waive my right to it, correct?
Right.
So the government says you can waive your right, but you still have that right. We're not taking it away from you, no matter what you wrote in a contract or someone forced you to sign.
Mhm.
So here, I believe, and we can go ask, you know, MR or whatever if you want, that the amendatory clause says you do not have to proceed forward with it. It's a privilege that you can, but
That's
you
right.
can. Okay, this is what I want to say, and this is where I was going to get to, but I wanted Christina and Dan to talk a little bit first. It's a privilege that you can go forward, but let me warn you, if someone at the last second says, you know what, if I pull this next $15,000 out, then I can't send my kid to that school or whatever, and I'm not doing it. I'm not moving forward. I don't think you have any legal right to go after them and for specific performance. And again, I'm not going to talk about how often any of that kind of stuff happens or whatever else, but there's going to be resentment from the seller of the EMD. There's going to be resentment of the seller from the listing agent. Why didn't you warn me that this was a loophole that the buyer could use? And again, I don't know if they would ever use it. I don't know if this has ever been, you know, fought in court. I just am saying that it sounds like they have the privilege and option to proceed, which sounds a lot more like they shall or will proceed if they agree to another term. So I'm just giving you this fair warning. Does that make sense, right, Tom?
I agree with that. I think the appraisal gap is unenforceable in an FHA situation, but the buyer would have the election to proceed if they want to pay over the appraised value. Dan, Christina, is that correct?
Yeah, one problem you might hit too is you might have a savvy underwriter who picks up on it and says you can't have this addendum and makes the seller and buyer remove it, which kind of tips off the buyer. He now has the legal right to not honor that.
Okay, now understand with that, and that's kind of like blackmail at the end for the buyer to the seller. And I shouldn't say that terminology, but you understand what I'm saying. That at the end, if the buyer says, well, I'm going to figure out what I learned and I'm not paying the other $20,000 because I don't have to, that's what my lender tells me. At the end of the day, the seller might say, yeah, well, take me to court because I'm not selling it to you, and send a release, right? Now that could get ugly. I'm just giving you fair warning. Correct. So again, we can go look into this longer, but understand conventional over FHA, you got to think about that. Okay. I don't want to bog down too much. Anybody got any final words? Christina, Dan? Nope. All right, cool. All right. That was a good topic. Not a good, beautiful topic, but a good topic to get your head around and understand. And it's another thing that shows your value versus some of these other agents running around loosey-goosey, not understanding this stuff. Okay. So That's why I wanted to put this whole thing together and make sure that we didn't talk about any other topic but this, okay? So additional discussions is the alternate financing clause. So actually, there's times where we're getting offers and they're saying they're going to go cash and then they go conventional, or they're saying they're going to go conventional 20% down or 25% down, and they go and do an LPMI, right? And maybe they do an LPMI because it doesn't appraise, you know, for the value, and that's an option. So I see Christina nodding her head because we know that's an option. So if I said I was going to put $80,000 down on a $400,000 house, the property comes in at 385. I have signed a gap appraisal and it fits within those guidelines where I have to eat it. Christina or Dan could say, well, I got a recommendation for you. Instead of putting another $15,000 up to make it no PMI, I can do what, Christina?
Just lower your down payment by that amount and then pay PMI on your loan, whether that be if you opt for the monthly option or you do the LPMI.
Correct. So always understand there's other options. And if you know you're right on that cusp and you got a client like that, maybe you talk to Christina or Dan and get your head around it. So you can say, all right, this is how much more a month it's going to cost you if you go and just do a straight 15% down or an LPMI. And then later down the road, maybe it's a house that you bought. You got a great, you know, got this interest rate. A year from now, the interest rate's still low enough, and you turned around and did a lot of work to the house. And now you can change that LPMI into a straight conventional with enough equity in the house to not pay PMI. Am I correct in saying that if it's conventional loan?
If you're on the monthly option, yes, you can do that.
Perfect. Anything else that we want to add to this topic before we move on? Or anybody have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, one thing that seems to be the case now, Guy, is if you can avoid going FHA, just do it. The big advantage to FHA is the seller can pay pretty much all the closing costs, but no one's asking for closing costs now. And if they are, they're not getting the house. So if you can go conventional, do that, because you can do a 3% down if you're a first-time home buyer. It just looks stronger. If you have a ton of money in your retirement that you don't want to touch, but you could, even though you're going to do 3% down, make the contract, if you're already pre-approved, 10% down or 20% down, because you could do that. And with the alternate financing contingency, you're free to do the 3% down, but you better be sure you can get approved with 3% down. It's going to look a lot stronger.
Yeah. And again, if you're the listing agent, you need to prove that they can do the other type of financing, the first one. You're not required to see if they can prove that they can do the alternate financing one. And then they are supposed to be going after that loan they said they could. So if Dan or Christina are trying to give them a better product or a product that makes sense, and it just misses whatever the money amount, the debt to income, whatever the topic might be, they still need to go after the one legally based on the contract that they said they were going to attempt to go for, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Again, this is the old cash appraisal contingency addendum. You might want to grab some verbiage out of there, whatever your buyer or seller might want to, excuse me. But again, this is what we used to use if there was an appraisal contingency. With cash deals right now, no one's even allowing, you know, an appraisal contingency. And the problem with the cash appraisal contingency now, it's whoever you pick as an appraiser. It's not who your lender's picking, you know? So just FYI on that. Let's go here. So I've gone over, I mean, we spent a pretty significant time. That's about an hour talking about forms and addendums. Did I miss anything? Do you have any other questions about this? I'm going to, you know, edit this meeting and put it up on our private group page. And, you know, again, if you have any addendums that come in and you need me to take a look at them, please let me know. By the way, Wade's on here. Wade has not introduced himself to everybody, so say hi, Wade.
Hello, everybody. Glad I could finally make it. So just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself, as guys said, to those of you I haven't met yet. So I am Wade Norrell. I am now the insurance manager for your office and have been for, I guess, over a month now at least. Definitely looking forward to getting to know you all. Please definitely reach out to me anytime if I can help you with any kind of insurance or warranty related to issue, question, purchase, anything I can do to help you there. You know, we do offer a pretty wide range of insurance products, so you know we can really insure up to 95% of pretty much any situations outside of your standard home or condo. You know, vacant homes, homes undergoing major renovations, manufactured homes, you name it. So let me know, and I'm happy to work with you guys there.
All right, definitely give me all your information again. I'll put it out there. You should also get on our Facebook group page and maybe post something so people know where to find you. Thanks, Wade.
Okay.
So again, buyer's remorse is existing as part of one of the problems. So you put a contract together and you're negotiating, you've accepted this offer because it looks the best. When I say it looks the best, it's got the best net proceed, right? And I've said this from the very beginning of the market getting better. When you get multiple offers, and it's not a perfect world, try to vet who's going to make it to the finish line. Now, your client can go, you know what? The market's so great. If this $5,000 extra offer doesn't make it to the finish line, I just go back and get one of the other offers. And again, you can go back to get one of the other offers, but the momentum and a lot of times in the excitement is not exactly the same. So you may not net even what you would have gotten on the second best offer that time. And we are where we are right now. Who knew whether or not, you know, the ransomware of, you know, the that's going on right now with the petroleum and everything with the pipeline would have had a bigger impact or lasted another few days, how that might impact people ready to put an offer in right now. There are some people in some areas saying that buyers are getting a little more exhausted and might be sitting back. We don't know. All we know is the moment we're in now with our clients, okay, as to how we're going to handle it. Dan always says we can't predict the future. You know, everybody believes they know what the forecast looks like in 6 months, 12 months, or whatever, what's going to happen. But you're in this moment with your client and you need to make the best decisions you can for your client at that moment, okay? So, and you need to explain that to them. If we come back into this 30, 45 days from now, that might be July or whatever it's going to be. It may change. July might not be, it might be might be better. I don't know. But all I know is these are the 10, 12, 4 offers, whatever it is we have right now. We're going to vet them. And these are the pluses and minuses of these offers. And this is what they're willing to do. And use that as determining on your strengths and weaknesses of the offers. And try to vet the lender, all that kind of stuff. I will tell you again, someone called me up and said, it's this mortgage company and I'm not feeling too good about it. Ultimately, it's the buyer and seller's decision, but you can see how an agent can have an influence on a listing agent on what the seller is willing to accept. I'm familiar with Dan or Christina. I'm not familiar with somebody in Idaho who is not getting back to me or whatever else, right? So all these factors come into play when you're putting your best foot forward with your client. And you need to be making those decisions and telling the pluses and minuses of your experiences or whatever with those offers and things like loan officer, et cetera, whatever. You know, we all have to be fair, but we also know that there's some factors that matter. 600 credit score versus an 800 credit score. This, you know, ABC brokerage in wherever versus someone you know and who's done business with you for 20 years in the mortgage industry. Just those kind of factors. Yes, Gilly.
I just want to know if the appraisal contingency form is going to be uploaded when we create a contract in the packet.
No. Tom, tell her why that's not happening.
Was the question about the appraisal contingency or the gap?
The gap.
The gap, yeah, I don't think Long and Foster has a gap form, and you know, I think they've been generated by other brokerages so far.
So
Gilly, the only thing I just said to you, you might have gotten on here
Something in
later.
writing, like Tom said, a short version of it? Can you write up it?
Hold on. Again, this was a discussion. Watch my eyes. This is a discussion. Okay, I'm gonna send you the meeting minutes. Okay. And then you know all the other stuff about the attorneys, the warnings, the CYAs, the other stuff. Does that make sense to you, Gilly?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Gilly, if just to give you a comment, I Google searched appraisal gap addendas, just those words. And it came up with a number of different forms
Oh,
that
yeah.
your buyers could use, not Gilly, but your buyers could use if they figured that they wanted to take this risk and submit a contract with that. So there is some language for your buyers to find out there. And did I handle that okay, Guy?
Perfectly. There you go.
Hey, Gilly, seriously, if you draft it, I swear it, you know, you do 100 of them, there's going to be 5 that don't end well, because people are going to wake up when the market shifts backwards and realize they well overpaid, and
Yeah,
they're going
the
to
thing
blame you.
I call it client amnesia.
Yeah.
We have amnesia. They were caught up in it at the moment with us. We went over it. We did everything we believed correctly. We had the discussions, and then all of a sudden they move in and they go, oh my gosh, now this house in Parkton or this house in, you know, Ocean City that I paid, you know, $200,000 more for to beat out everybody else. And, you know, I'm pretty sure my agent said it was worth it. And now we're in a buyer's market and now it's $200,000 less, you know, and now it's our fault. Okay. So what's the time frame someone can sue for, Thomas?
3 years.
3 years. So,
Yep.
so if this ends in 2022, just hold your breath until 2026, right?
So-
And make sure they don't put anything in. As long as they put something in, right, and keep delaying it, they could still do it. So if they got to put it in within that 3 years, some kind of, what do they have to do legally to make sure it can continue on, Thomas?
So if I'm a seller and I request
I'm joking.
it done, I have
What's
to,
that? I can't hear you.
if I am a seller, okay, and I request to have it done because they offered way over asking price, I can have them, I can ask them to put something together.
All right, so I think, and Gilly, I don't know what's going on with her internet, but she's like breaking up. But what I think she's trying to say is, can the seller request when they're getting multiple offers, I want you to put a waiver appraisal, or I want you to put a gap appraisal into the contract. So they offer up to, they say you listed at 500, and they said, well, we're going to beat everybody else out and we're going to offer 560. So you're like, oh my God, 560. That's crazy. Now there's some savvy agents out there, buyers agents. I don't know if it's savvy, sneaky, whatever they're doing. And they just blow everybody else out of the water with their offer. And everybody just sees like, wow, you know, this is an amazing price. Maybe it's a $200,000 house and everybody's going FHA in that neighborhood, like 8 out of 10 are FHA VA. And they go in, they give you an FHA offer, and they give it for 300,000, and the people are like, "Oh my God!" And nothing else is appraised for more than 189, right? In the last 180 days. So now that agent secures the contract, but did not do what Gilly says. They didn't put any appraisal contingency in there or gap appraisal because none of the other ones could do it, right? They knew practically. The lender said, "No, you don't have an additional $30,000. You can't do that," right? So that person does, and then after the appraisal comes in, the 300,000 has to be 202, right? So Gilly's saying if somebody is stepping up to the plate and going over everybody else and all, can the seller say, my seller may consider your offer if you put a $60,000 gap appraisal in it, right? That's what you're saying? And the answer is, of course, your seller, just like the buyer, can ask for anything they want. Again, some of the problems I'm seeing is, and this has always happened out there, is watch your language. You guys sometimes start speaking for yourself and not for your client. My client wants to do this. My seller wants to do that. It's not get your person to do this or make it sound like it's coming from you. It has to be discussed with your client first. And it has to be coming and articulated that your client has, considered this, or your client wants this, or your client has submitted this, okay?
Do it like this.
Especially in this situation. And you need to document this.
Jesus coffee.
All right, Thomas, Paul, let me put him on. Anything else? Anybody else?
Oh, you right.
Hey, Guy, this is Sherelle.
Yes, Sherelle?
One other thing I wanted to say, because I've had a couple gap appraisals, is that when the buyer, and agents may already know this, but when a buyer is offering to do the extra gap appraisal amount, I have asked for proof of those funds to make sure that buyer can do that, so that in addition to the down payment money plus your closing costs, I want to see that you are also able to have those funds available for that gap appraisal. I just want to throw that out there.
Absolutely. I kind of thought I articulated that. I probably didn't say it as clear as Sherelle, but yes, you need to vet. I say this over and over again. When you're representing the seller, if you're getting these offers, you want to see who's going to make it to the finish line. And part of who's going to make it to the finish line is vetting and looking at all the information and contacting that lender and saying, hey, Christine, I just got your offer. The offer says it's a $500,000 offer. They've given me a gap appraisal. I've been looking at the comps. I'm a little concerned. I want to know if this thing comes in at 450, have you looked at their bank statements and everything? And if you talk to them, are they secure enough to still do the type of financing they're going for, but throw in another $50,000 if they had to? And then what would your answer be? Christina, Dan, somebody?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we would say, yes, we verified the bank statements. Yes, they have the cash needed. If it comes in under, I don't know, let's say 10, and then you need to make up the 10 or something. It's a simple conversation, but the question does need to be asked, when you're vetting the lender. And then if you're the buyer's agent, you want to make sure you're communicating with either Dan or I if we're working on it, and you want to, or if we're not the lender on it, you want to make sure you communicate with the loan officer that the buyer is working with, just to make sure that you have the whole picture going into the offer.
And there are deals, and I thank you very much for that. Perfectly said. There are deals that have not gone through because the agent did not prep the loan officer ahead of time, and the loan officer wasn't available and ready to talk. And when you've got 10 offers going, okay, and I've seen some of you frantically in the middle of them, and you're making the phone call. So I'm calling this guy, I'm calling that agent, loan officer, I'm calling her, and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I get the responses from, a couple of loan officers that are right on. They know the client. They say great credit scores. They tell you, yes, they've got the money. Yes, they've got this job, blah, blah, blah. This has all been taken care of. We're just waiting for the contract, the appraisal, and this thing's going full steam ahead, right? So, and then final VOEs or whatever else. So that is going to help you a lot more in this type of environment than, giving something from, I'll pick on Bank of America or whatever. And then next thing
I know you're going to say their name.
So then you're trying to call them. Nobody's reaching back. They think they're special. We gave what we needed. That's that. Well, that may not be that for this particular listing agent going over things with the seller. They want to know that everybody's in this to get this done and get this ship sailing. Okay. So just remember that. And like Christina said, communicate. And like Sherelle said, make sure as the listing agent, you are prepared to verify the stuff, and make sure as a buyer's agent before you submit the offer. Because I had an agent call me up a couple days ago and I said, you can't put that in there. You need to verify that they can do that. I said, you're at a conventional 5%. So the only thing they can do is a 3.5 FHA or a 5% conventional. And you're saying they're able to do $35,000 more. I felt like I was, what's it, Tom Cruise, and show me the money, right? Show me the money. There was no money to show. And so, you know, again.
Yeah, don't rely on the buyer, because sometimes they don't understand what all is needed to even close on the transaction without an appraisal gap. So definitely call the lender.
Yeah, so it's easy to be in the casino and, you know, be willing to, you know, go up, 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 up. And that's why I always say, make sure that that buyer can do what's happening in this excitement. Okay. So,
Hey, Guy.
Yep.
When it gets dicey like that, I'll always send an email to the buyer and just say, as we discussed, if you have to kick in extra, you will have to liquidate your 401k account or get a gift from your mom. I want to get the gift letter up front, so that if they come back later and say, but I'm getting hit with a huge fee for my 401k or whatever, it's in writing. It's not just a conversation. Because I also have to put that in a letter sometimes to the seller saying they're aware and they have the means and ability to do this.
And there's a time frame for that as well. So
Right.
again, if they're starting to do things that are a little creative and it's not just in their bank account, you know, you don't want to have so-and-so from across the pond sending money and putting it into an account. Now all of a sudden, Dan or Christina go, right? So the other issue is, if they are getting the money, how long does it take to come from that institution for them to receive it? And then again, for the underwriter to go, all right, we've checked all this, we're all good now. So again, some of this stuff is an ounce of prevention and preparedness, as we talked about before. Make sure you're preparing for these kind of things to happen. There was one other article that I had. I'll just give that to you for reading. That was about gap appraisals. I don't think that's necessary because it would probably be redundant on everything we've discussed. If you guys missed, some of you guys got in late. If you missed the little video thing I did, I'll send that out as well, the TikTok videos. But there's plenty of them out there dealing with gap appraisals. You guys just need to be able to have the conversations. And again, as Tom said, later on in the world, buyers and sellers seem to forget some of these conversations we had. Document, and document it in a correct way. And if you don't understand what that means, come see me. And don't over document in your texts things that might hurt you one day. So if you're saying stuff and you don't know how to articulate it, you might be better off picking up the phone and explaining it, because a misunderstood text could be just enough to do a print screen and say, see, this is what he or she told me. So be very careful with this. Again, this is ultimately the decision of the buyer and seller. We're in a strange time right now with this extreme seller market, low inventory, whatever. We could be having all these discussions, and before you know it, the discussions will be different. But right now it is what it is. And right now, unfortunately, MR doesn't appear to be writing up in it, at least at this very moment. That could change if enough pressure, but I doubt it. Is going to write anything that's going to make Gilly or anybody else happy with the verbiage, and especially Tom, who would say, you know, be a little more critical of it. But we know people want it. We know that other clients are losing out if they don't do something about the appraisal or appraisal waiver in certain deals, and they miss that property and they go back out and they can't find the property that they want as much as the one they missed out on. So, you know, it's not the most perfect conversation to have, but it's a conversation that I felt we needed to have. Okay. So I think we're pretty good from there. And again, if anybody has any questions along the way, definitely ask. But you now know what a gap appraisal is, an appraisal waiver, you know, they've got other names for it, but it's real, it's happening, and you need to be fully informed of it. So, all right, you guys have a great day. Oh, any new listings to discuss? Anybody have anything they want to discuss? No?
I do.
Oh, go, Laura. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a
Lower down, bring the arms back.
I have one in Roland Park that goes active tomorrow. It's gorgeous. It's on Edgevale, great block, a great property, and it's going to be listed for 680,000. It has 5 bedrooms, 2.5 baths,
Wow.
major system updates, a great large level yard, and a walkout basement that's finished.
Very nice, very nice. Anyone else? Going once?
I do.
Ah, there's Deb. Go.
It's coming on Sunday. It's a 4 or 5 bedroom. It's been added on many times on Norris Run Court in Reisterstown, which is off of Berryman's Lane. And it's going to be in the low 5s. 2-car garage, storage galore, and she's ready to go. And it has a swimming pool, beautiful swimming pool.
Okay. Well, it's articles I'm seeing. I don't know who's not muted now.
How many acres does it have?
How many what?
Acres. How many acres?
I think it's an 1.25 acres, if I remember correctly. But it's a wooded lot in the back.
First floor master?
There's a master and 3 or 4 bedrooms because they had downstairs. I mean, they're the 3rd owner.
Is there a first floor master?
No, but there could be.
Their potential first floor master. That's what I think she's saying.
Yes.
So anyway, again, the article's out there talking about the difference of, hold on, let me see. I gotta mute everybody. I don't know where that's coming from. So there you go. So the discussions about, again, landscaping, hardscaping, in-ground pools, whatever. I don't know if that trend's changing. You guys could tell me in the next couple weeks or so, but it still seems like apples to apples when properties have in-ground pools, backyards, whatever else, they're having a lot more success, even more so than the beautiful gray backsplash or whatever. So it's just interesting to see the trends that are changing. Before we would say sometimes that would be a negative, you know, or it would be just about equal. It depends. It depends on the area. But, and I'm not talking about Florida here. We're talking about this region. Gilly's laughing, but yes, it's true. They all have to have their, screened in pool, right? But anyway, but here it is definitely been a change in trend. And when I was looking recently for a couple agents, I said, hey, you got to do a couple things to spruce up the backyard or whatever, because outside living is a little more important right now. That, again, we're all getting vaccinated. I just got my 2nd vaccine. So, so I've gotten the disease, got both vaccines. So hopefully I'm good for 6 months or so or whatever. But at the end of the day, you definitely need to know that you have to have that conversation. You'll get offers, but it could have an impact on you if you're not doing a little bit to spruce up the back. Okay. Yes. Gilly.
I need a house with 3+ acres, anywhere between 3 and 10.
All right. Gilly's in search of something. I bet some of you are too. 3+ acres in the same area, Reisterstown area.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I got
Carroll County too.
Carroll County too. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm in search of, for a buyer, almost anywhere, at least 3 bedrooms, has to have a first floor master, has to be private, up to $1 million. They're cash buyers. They really want the privacy, and they really have to have a first floor master. And a
master up to $1 million. Anybody who can't get their person off the fence to list right now, maybe you can just do some kind of quick agreement with them, a one-time agreement, and give Mindy a call.
Thank you.
The other option is do an in search of buyers. So for some of you agents who, don't have that many listings going on or having anything come up, what a great opportunity to say, we have somebody right now looking, and this is what they're looking for. And, You could get the phone call, and then maybe some people don't want a bunch of people in their house, and you've got the deal. Okay. Yes. One more.
More, I have my house. I have a house in Kent. I am selling, and
We just lost
time-
you keep breaking up. You got a house, and that's we couldn't hear where the house was.
in Canton,
In Canton. Oh, okay, stripper. Yep. Got it.
Reaper, yes, and it's gonna be fixed by Saturday. This Saturday, next Saturday it will be fixed up, cleaned up, and available for showing probably Sunday.
Okay, so Streeper will be ready on Sunday for how much?
Probably 439.9, 440.
439.9. So I don't know. Laura just had a settlement in Canton. I wonder if she got any leads from that. If you got any buyers that don't, are interested, you might want to let her know. But the property's being fixed up right now. Before it was rented while it was being shown. Now it's being fixed up and being put back on the market. Okay. All right. So everybody stay safe out there. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to call me. We're going to do some more training again on social media, trying to get some lead generating stuff out there. If you missed that TLC meeting, what a great opportunity to send letters out there and marketing pieces to try to get a conversation going. 80% of the
Came back
people
because she said her
probably
grandson can't get a Uber.
Oh my God. I'm sorry again. 80% of the people might never want to use it, but at least it got you in the door to have the discussion. Others it might be the perfect thing for them. But again, that's what we're out there doing, trying to get listings and trying to get people on while the market's hot, especially if they can sell and they already know where they're going to live. And again, we've had this discussion. Lots of people are living in their second homes, living with family members now. I've heard people confidently say, I'm selling my house at the top. I'm moving in with a family member. And they have this, and again, we can't tell them anything because we don't know the forecast like Dan says, but they think that when the market will slow up, they have a belief 12, 18 months from now or whatever, and they'll go out and buy when they're ready to buy. So if they have that kind of comfort level and that ability, God bless them. So just be ready and be ready for the conversation. You need to have a different presentation and conversation now for people than you did 18 months ago. It's obvious. And you have to have background knowledge of all this stuff, including the appraisal contingency. But if you're dealing with a seller, you can rest assured what's your backup plan and what's your conversation with them when they sell their house, because it's not as easy for some people. As you can hear, we could have probably had 50 people talking about what they're in search of right now for their buyers. Okay, so have a great day. Take care, y'all.
Thanks, Guy. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See ya.